Help me to clean my room.
Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Mishpachah. I'm Debbie Good, and Mishpachah is the Hebrew word for family. In this show, we work with ideas and things that we can do with our families, for all members of our families. I have two special people with me here today. Gila, very special friend, and my husband, Joe. And we're going to be talking about, kind of wrapping up some ideas we've been talking about with Sukkot. We're going to talk about how the festival concludes. We've been talking about Sukkot now for several weeks, and different aspects of it. The Suka, the lulav and the etrog, some ideas and things we can do with the Suka. And now let me ask. I'll tell you what, Joe. I'm going to ask you this question. What is one of the most profound days that begins to occur towards the end of the festival of Sukkot?
Hosana Rabat.
Okay, now, you know what, I don't know for sure if we ever mentioned this before, but the days of Sukkot actually begins in the month of Tishri. We had mentioned earlier that it begins 5 days after Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is Tishri 10, the 10th of Tishri. Okay, so Sukkot will begin on the 15th of Tishri and goes for how many days?
7 days, so to the 21st of Tishri, and that 7th day, that's the greatest day of the festival, and it's called Hosana Rabat.
Hoshana sounds an awful lot like Hosanna, or...
Well, that's where Hosanna comes from.
Exactly.
It's from
Well,
Hoshana. And it means like the great salvation. What would be a little...
Save us.
Save us, O Lord.
Great, yeah. That's
Hoshenu.
Hoshianu,
Yeah, Hoshianu. I know it's one of the responses that occurs quite often during this. Hoshianu, but it's.
But this was the
basically
big day of
asking
your temple ceremonies and things like that.
Okay, you said the big day of the temple.
The biggest.
Okay, so
the biggest.
there are ceremonies that were taking place all
Every
during this
day.
Okay, all during this time. Excuse me, but during this one day, it's going to stand apart from the others. And how is that?
Well, like for instance, where you did other things. In the temple, you might do them one time. You do them 7 times on this day to amplify it and to show the greatness and bring everybody up to this grand finale.
Well, it reminds me of 2 different things. One, having to deal specifically with the festival of Sukkot, is that if you read where it's in the Torah, where it's talking about what they did during temple times, is that you would offer this many animals this day, the next day. There's an increase. Each day there's more and more and more when you look at the animals. There's an increase of it. But it also reminds me of the commandment that we are always to increase and never to decrease. We always gain more. We never depreciate in value. We keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, wouldn't you say?
That's right.
All right, now that's great. If you live in, circa 100, a common era. If you live back in those days and you can walk down to your, to the temple up on the hill in Jerusalem, but what does that have to do with today? What do we do today for Hosana Rabat? Gila, maybe I'll ask you this question.
Well, it's big celebrations with the synagogues, and actually there's a whole set of prayers and a whole set of poetry, of special poetry that you say in the synagogue. You take willow branches. Right, you take willow branches to the synagogue, and that's one thing that people carry.
Well, this is representative of the 7 Hakafah circuits down where
they went around the altar.
Yes,
the
altar, the circuits.
picture.
Oh, you have a picture? Let's see if we can get
This is a
this
picture.
up a little bit closer. Let's see.
This is a picture of the ceremony as it was conducted in the temple, but there's still a remembrance to this day. And you can see here that they're carrying 2 things. They have the Arba Minim, the 4 species that they're carrying, and then others of them, as they're circling the altar, are carrying willow branches.
Well, and they would go. The priests would go out to a specific valley, and they would cut these huge branches of willow. Is that correct?
Right, to the
And
Motza
I
Valley.
remember hearing you talk about how they were marching towards the city, and they would swing these branches, and it is whoosh, whoosh. This mighty sound as they were coming. Okay, again, very, very interesting. It's just wonderful. But there's something we need to do, in our own homes, in our own lives, towards this. And I would suggest this year, especially for those people who are going to build a Sukkah, who are going to begin to investigate more of what you can do for Sukkot, that you read some of the prayers. As we pointed out, Hoshana really has to do with salvation. Lord, save us. And it has to do with bringing that salvation closer to all members of your family. These are some things you can do to incorporate for every member of the family. Well, following Hosana Rabat, what happens?
Well, you have several. You have 2 other dates that are going to be associated
Which are
with
already
this.
like exterior, right? Because it's the 8th day.
Right, it's
That's
outside
right.
of
You want
Sukkot,
it-
but it's
right.
attached to it.
I was going to say they're adjoining. It's not really the same thing, but it's kind
right.
of seamed together. Okay.
And it's going to flow from one right into the other.
Okay, and so that would be what?
You have Shemini Atzeret,
Yes.
and
What is Shemini Atzeret?
well, it's going to mean the 8th day, but it also means the conclusion. Atzeret is going to be the concluding. So it's the Sukkot is not actually over till you get through Shemini Atzeret, nor is Rosh Hashanah. They're all kind of connected.
Well, it's like we
So
had
the season
mentioned.
comes
We mentioned
to a
several
conclusion
programs
here.
ago. Yes, that the festivals are actually like one big festival. It's one long season. Even as the spring festivals are one long season. That several festivals combined together. Now, also, Gila had mentioned. I think the last time we were together that, a while back, we had talked about how you hope it does not rain. In your Suka. Most often it does, but then you begin to pray for rain. So when do these prayers for rain actually begin?
No, there's a whole interesting concept. On our last trip, when we went to the Diaspora Museum,
Yes.
you brought that out in the one of the Light of the Southwest programs. There's a quote that said, "A people embarked on a long journey with only a book for a guide."
Right.
And the book, of course, is the Word, is the Tanakh. That's what the Jewish people had. But it had another really interesting thing with them. The Jewish people had another interesting thing with them, parting for diaspora. They took the Hebrew calendar, they took the Hebrew year with them, they packed it, and they took it with them. Now, you could be in Europe, in Northern Europe, and in the month of April, there's still snow on the ground. But you'll be celebrating the beginning of the barley harvest.
In Israel, because it's
in
figured by what's happening in Israel,
Exactly.
not wherever you are in the world.
Exactly. You could be in Australia, and October is like the beginning.
That's the other time of the year. Yes, that's right. It's the opposite
But
because
you'll
it's
be
Southern Hemisphere.
celebrating the harvest, the ingathering of the fruit. So you actually took the land of Israel with you, with the seasons and with the calendar.
That is so
that you
impressive, right?
that you continued. So it's not only say I'm praying for the peace of Jerusalem, not only the prayer for
Now,
the
so
peace
notice
of
that
Jerusalem.
your shirt has a sukkah on it with the
Right.
grape, the grapevines or like the grape arbor hanging overhead.
But in addition to praying for the peace of Jerusalem, you actually take Jerusalem. You take a little bit of
You take
Jerusalem
it with you.
wherever you go.
That is
So your life cycle.
that is very, very impressive. So it's not only just going up to the mountain, going up to the temple, going to Jerusalem, going even to Israel. You take part of it with
Yes,
you. At all
it's
times.
always
There's a
with
quote that you showed me once in Shorshim, the same store that this shirt came from. But it is so good. It was by a very famous rabbi, and it says, "Wherever I am in the world," how does it
wherever
go?
I go,
Wherever I go.
wherever I go in the world, I go to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
That I'm always that's where I'm headed.
Yeah,
So you always have this in
Yeah.
your mind.
right.
Well, let's say we've gone
Right.
through, all of these days. We've gone through Hosana Rabat, and we've gone through Shemini Atzeret. What comes next?
Right. Now, let me just take one more thing. The joy is tremendous, right? There's a lot of singing, a lot of good food, a lot of family
Fellowship.
fellowship, and a lot of family events.
Okay, and Joe, you had some particular thoughts you were going to share on that on Simchat Torah also.
Well, Simchat Torah has is a time that you end up the year on your reading of the Torah, and you start all over. Now, it's done different in Israel than it's done in the rest of the world, because in Israel, Shemini Atzeret and Simchat Torah are actually the same day.
Tell me, what does Simchat mean?
Simchat means rejoicing.
Rejoicing.
Rejoicing in the Torah.
Simchat Torah, you're right. Rejoicing in the Torah. So this is the day when things are going to come to a conclusion, but actually we're going to find out that things start over all over again. Is that correct?
That's right. So you end a cycle and you begin the cycle again. Now, as I mentioned, in Israel, this is going to be on the 22nd of Tishrei, the day following Hosana Rabat. You do both Shemini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. But in the rest of the world, You have the 22nd is Shemini Atzeret, and then the following day, the 23rd, is Simchat Torah.
What happens during Simchat Torah?
Well, just as you had, for instance, on Hosana Rabat, you have these circuits that are done in the synagogue, remembering the circuits that were done in the temple, going around the altar, and special prayers.
I know what many synagogues will do today. Yes, and there's something specifically for children to do also during this time. What do the children do in the synagogues?
Oh, first of all, there's these beautiful flags and decorations that the children carry, and they're all decorated with symbols of the Torah, and they have a crown of the Torah. And then, of course, they go with the parents. And as the fathers carry the books of the Torah, you would usually have a picture of a kid in one arm and a Torah in the other arm.
Life
and that's
Torah.
how they walk.
It's very impressive. It shows you how life is on one end,
Yeah.
or the continuation of life, I guess I should say, and Torah on the other.
Right. And there's always, it's kind of a funny teaching of one of the rabbis asked the question. He said, some things just never happen and you don't ask why. Says, you don't drop your tefillin, right? You don't drop your phylacteries. And he says, and you don't drop a book of Torah. Have you ever seen anybody drop a book of Torah?
No.
And they carry all kinds of things. It just doesn't go down. Just like you make pretty much sure not to drop your kid.
That's right. Well, yeah, that's
I know.
It's tremendous
And the kids jump.
analogy
The Torah
there.
doesn't jump, but
Do you know,
it's
talking
just-
about the Torah,
so
if I
it's
can
just-
take a second, the Jewish community was divided long ago into two main communities: the Ashkenazi community and then the Sephardic community. Ashkenazi be from Western Europe, and the Sephardic being from Spain and Africa and the Middle East. The Ashkenazi Torah scrolls are decorated different than the Sephardic scrolls. And the Ashkenazi scrolls have a crown, and they have an ephod, and they have a belt, and they transferred the garments of the high priest to the Torah
they have
scroll.
a literal breastplate.
That's
of the
right.
Torah scroll.
That's right. It's really interesting
Yeah.
when you look at this, and you have this consciousness of the temple even as as you see the Torah and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I wanted us to do is not just to sit up here and talk, but to do something that people can take into their homes with them. And Gila, this is a very rare opportunity to have you here with us. We wanted to take advantage of Gila's being in West Texas with us, because you, not only do you have the knowledge of things, you have the life experience of these things, but you also have what we have found, what we recognize as a very fine singing voice. And we felt, how could this opportunity go by and not use that opportunity to the fullest extent? So first of all, I'm going to ask you to teach us a song, but I'm not going to ask you to teach us a song that we always do. We'll save that at a later date. But you had mentioned a song that is particularly done during the festival of Simchat Torah, right?
That's right, yeah.
And what is the song? Can you introduce us to it and what it means? And I think we have the words written out that we can put up on the screen for people.
Okay. It's what it basically says is it talks about the rejoicing in the Torah, right? Sisu v'simchu, rejoice and be glad in the Torah and in the festival of Simchat Torah, and utnu kavod, give honor to the Torah. Utnu kavod la Torah. So sisu v'simchu besimchat Torah, utnu kavod la Torah.
And that's the whole thing?
That's the whole thing.
I'm going to ask you to sing that. Then why don't you sing it through and say about 3 times or so, so that people can catch the melody, maybe 3 or 4 times, because it is a very, very short song. And that way people can see the words up on the screen, but they can also hear the melody enough to where they can begin to learn it. And you say that this is a very popular song.
Oh, it's a tremendously popular in all synagogues.
Somebody at some point in time is always
very joyful song.
Yeah.
It's very...
And it's, I'll do it a cappella, which is apropos also because, there's usually no music instrument.
It's always going to be, a cappella, and in a home it probably would be also. Now, of course, you can buy recordings with this particular piece on.
Oh, yeah, of course. You can buy tapes and you can buy, yeah.
Okay, well, let's hear it.
Sisu v'simchu besimchat Torah, utnu kavod la Torah. Sisu v'simchu besimchat Torah, ותנו כבוד לתורה, שישו ושמחו בשמחת תורה. 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 ותנו כבוד לתורה.
And it's one of those songs that you can just sort of fade out because
it's a lot of fun.
over and over and over and over. I think I see a lot of dancing, a lot of marching around in the streets.
Totally.
I see Torah scrolls and marching all around all over the the Western Wall area. That there's probably just a big street party almost.
In fact, what you have is called hakafot, right? Which is encircling circuits.
Right, yes.
But you do two of them. You do first hakafot in the synagogue. And that's done according to the mitzvot, and you can't have music in the synagogue because it's like a Sabbath, and it's still very, very joyous. But then you make sure to have second hakafot, and that will be done in the central square of, like in the city square, City Hall Square in Jerusalem, or at the Kotel. But then you have tons of musical instruments. So just the expression of joy that people want to express and the need for the musical instruments
But it's a
and all
type
that.
of completion. First of all, whenever you make a circular motion, what you're saying basically is that life is in a type of cycle.
Yeah.
It is unending. Whatever ends one side will begin again in the other. And that is what is implied, of course, with the circuit.
Absolutely.
But one of the things, having to do with the year, we've already been through, let's say the beginning of the year was Rosh Hashanah. Okay, remember that in the civil calendar, Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year. We're still very close. We're in the first month of the beginning of the year, and we're starting something over again. But it's almost like there's a little overlap. It's like we've completed something. It's beginning, but it's completed something, but there's a little overlap, and then we're starting something. If that makes any sense, it's a little tiny bit of an overlap.
It's kind of like the double mint gum.
Double your pleasure.
Double your pleasure. Extend your coffee break by chewing double mint gum. Okay.
All right.
The extension is what I'm trying to get to.
I'm not so sure I draw the correlation, but what I'm trying to say is Simchat Torah, rejoicing in the Torah. Why do we rejoice in the Torah on that day? What specifically having to do with Torah begins on that day?
Well, you conclude your year's readings. The cycle of readings, and you start again a new cycle of readings.
And so if we start again, that would start all over with
the beginning of the Torah.
Bereshit, right, or Genesis, starting with the first chapter, the very beginning of Genesis. Now, what a lot of people may or may not know is that we do have assigned readings that go throughout the year, for every week of the year. And this is universally seen all over. As a matter of fact,
here.
Well, there are a lot of people in this area that are beginning to keep up with the Parashat, or the Torah portion for that week, and it's more and more common for people to begin to read, what is commonly read throughout the year. You'll find after you go through a year or two, you'll find that these readings it's incredible how they fit time-wise and with what's going on with the year. But Simchat Torah is where we begin everything all over again, and the Parashat is going to start all over again. And you wanted to show?
Well, this is what's called a stone Tanakh. It's one of the different
the beginning of
Tanakh
the outside of the book
that you can get. But this is for a lot of Christians. You might not be familiar. Same books that you have in a Christian or Gentile published Bible. They're going to be arranged in a different order, some of the books. But it starts off with the 5 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and they're divided into sections, and each section is called a parashah, which you see right here. And so this is parashah Bereshit, which Bereshit means in the beginning. and it goes for 5 chapters. And then your second parashah is going to be Noach. And it starts in chapter 6.
What I really like about the Stone editions also, since they have the books divided according to the to each parashah, that you can see at a glance where it begins, where it ends.
It gives you the haftarah also.
That's
yes,
right.
it tells you what the
Whereas
reading for the prophets is.
if you're looking through a traditional Bible, you have to kind of keep up with that yourself, and you have to look for all of that. Now, I know that when people, for example, if people want to write us and get a calendar, which, by the way, we do offer. If people, we just have a little pocket memo type calendar, and it will list out the parashah for each week. If they do not know what that portion is, we also have a handout we can give them that will give what the chapters or verse is for each parashah, that's listed. There are other places where they can get that information as well. One of the things, we had done recently, and is now up on our website, you had a printout of the 613 commandments.
Yes.
As they appear chronologically,
Going through each parashah.
They are not codified in the way that Maimonides had done,
Right.
but they are done basically in order as they appear in Torah. It's very, very interesting.
it's very
People might want
interesting.
to contact us if they would like that information, or they could check on our website, and they can get that information as well. But speaking of Torah, you and I, we've just been laughing and laughing and laughing because Gila's got the song. I don't know if it's actually got a title. It's what I refer to as Torah, Torah, Torah. She doesn't understand what's so funny. No. But, I'm married to a man who enjoys World War II movies, and Torah, Torah, Torah was a big one. But in this case, it's Torah, Torah, as we would spell it. And you have another song that is very popular, and it's always incredibly easy. So if you would share what this means.
Right. What it tells us is just the Torah that Moses gave us, right? Moses gave us the Torah. And that was,
he brought it to us, yeah. He was a recipient too. He gave it to us. Okay?
Right. He was a messenger.
Exactly. Oh, good word. Yeah, good. He was a messenger. So what are the words of it?
Torah natan lanu Moshe. Torah natan lanu Moshe.
Okay, then Natan Lanu, we talked about this when we learned Dayenu, that we do at Passover. Natan Lanu is a phrase that occurs very often.
Gave us.
Right.
Yes, right. And you always have Natan Lanu because God gave us so many wonderful things. Yeah. So this one goes like this. Torah, 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 Natan lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Natan lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Natan lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Natan lanu Moshe.
Okay.
Oh, it's tremendous.
It's a really easy
It's very
one,
easy.
yeah.
I want to try to do it with you too in a minute, but I've got to point out that the first time you did this, your first couple of phrases that you did, I think I counted each one as having about 12
That
times.
could be.
12 times you say Torah. Try it for us again. Let's see if Joe and I are willing, brave enough to. We're going to be brave enough to jump in with you. But let's hear it one more time so that people can really hear that melody.
Okay, very good. Torah, 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 Natan lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Natan lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Natan lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Natan lanu Moshe.
I know that
Very
we're going to have to
good.
try this year. I mean,
Yael's going to love that one.
Melody,
yeah,
and that one I
that's
got to
it.
tell you, that is so easy because we're talking, Torah, Natan, Lanu, Moshe. We're talking
That's
4
it.
words.
Yeah.
And the melody is actually harder than the 4 words.
Well, you
We're
know
talking-
all my good songs have 4 words, so.
Oh, God.
Gila, I want to ask you something.
Yes.
It's kind of going back to during the days of Sukkot.
Yeah.
And everybody's put up their Suka, and you've got all these things of sleeping in the Suka and eating in the Suka and everything. Are there a lot of Suka parties? Do people have parties, have a company over to experience their Sukkah, anything like that?
Sukkah parties are hard because the Sukkah is too small for a party.
Right, because you don't.
It's like,
it's,
you don't have
it's
enough
designed
room.
for a family, not for a tribe.
Yeah, that's right. But what you do have, you have every year you have a Sukkah contest.
Uh-huh.
And everybody has contests. They have, for example, they have a contest of the best Sukkah in the army. And I know that a couple of times battalions in the Barak Brigade took the Sar Brigade, of course, took the prize because, you know, they have guys that really pay attention.
Wait a minute. I want to make sure I get this
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
The army, a secular, political, military, you know,
It's the army of Israel.
I know, but this is just, you don't understand. I mean, being from the United States, you don't understand how incredible this is.
Wow.
The army will conduct a Sukkah contest.
Yeah.
For Sukkot, which is a religious event.
But it's also a national event.
I know, but it's
Yeah.
just incredible. I mean, it just it has such religious implications.
Absolutely,
that is absolutely incredible.
So they're going to judge it according to its decorations, its
Yeah,
construction,
they have a whole-
its
I mean, they have a whole
originality, or
Yeah, they have a whole set of criteria.
Let me-
Every city has a contest. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that I know that Gila and I talked before that you can see Sukkot sometimes being put up all over the city. I hadn't really thought about it being in the army. You know, I haven't thought about these young 18 to 22-year-old men and women who are going to do something outside their barracks. You
Well,
know,
sure.
But I know that there are places you can go. There's a park, the the National Landscape. You know, they will have some versions of Sukkot. You know, and I mean the one my favorite was the one that's on top of a camel.
Okay, all kinds of different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's an exciting time. I mean, we're talking about Sukkot and Hosana Rabat and Shemini Atzeret, Simchat Torah. It's a time that's kind of like the epitome of the year. Everything comes up to this time, and it's a great time for you to get with friends, certainly to get with your family,
Family
and
especially.
experience that time in the Mishpachah before God. Shalom.
Shalom.